Presentation was made by master student Kairkenova Akmaral. The theme of presentation: modern trends in foreign language teaching. Plan of presentation: innovative and creative approaches in teaching a foreign language, the role of authentic text in teaching a foreign language, text as a resource of professionally based information. Question number 1. Innovative and creative approaches in teaching a foreign language. What is an approach? Underlying each method is a theory on the nature of language and a theory on the nature of language learning, both of which comprise the approach. The grammar translation approach. This is a method that has been used by language teachers for many years. At one time it was called classical method since it was first used in the teaching of the classical languages Latin and Greek. Earlier in this century it was used for the purpose of helping students read and appreciate foreign language literature. Direct approach, a reaction to the grammar translation approach and its failure to produce learners who could communicate in the foreign language they had been studying. No use of the mother tongue is permitted. Lessons begin with dialogues and anecdotes in modern conversational style. Actions and pictures are used to make meanings clear. Direct approach. The target culture is also taught inductively. Literary texts are read for pleasure and are not analyzed grammatically. The teacher must be a native speaker or have native-like proficiency in the target language. Reading approach, a reaction to the problems experienced in implementing the direct approach. Reading was viewed as the most usable skill to have in foreign language since not many people traveled abroad at that time. Also, few teachers could use the foreign language well enough to use direct approach effectively in class. Reading approach. Only the grammar useful for reading comprehension is taught. Vocabulary is controlled at first and then expanded. Translation is once more a respectable classroom procedure. Reading comprehension is the only language skill emphasized. The teacher doesn't need to have good oral proficiency in the target language. Audiolinguism or the audiolingual approach. Audiolingual methodology owes its existence to the behaviorist model of learning using the stimulus-response reinforcement model. It attempted through a continuous process of such positive reinforcement to engender good habits in language learners. Audiolinguism relied heavily on drills like substitution to form these habits. Oral situational approach, a reaction to the reading approach and its lack of emphasis on oral skills, was dominant in Britain during the 1940s, 1950s, and 1960s. It draws from the reform movement and the direct approach, but adds features from foreign languages and emerging professional field of language pedagogy. The spoken language is primary. All language material is practiced orally before being presented in written form. Only the target language should be used in the classroom. Efforts are made to ensure that the most general and useful lexical items are presented. Grammatical structures are graded from simple to complex. New items are introduced and practiced situationally. At the post office, at the bank, at the dinner table. Cognitive approach, a reaction to the behavioral features of audiolingual approach influenced by cognitive psychology and Chomsky linguistics. Language learning is viewed as a rule acquisition, not habit formation. Instruction is often individualized. Learners are responsible for their own learning. Grammar must be taught, but it can be taught deductively. Rules first, practice later, and inductively. Rules can either be studied after practice or left as impact information for the learners to process on their own. Pronunciation is de-emphasized. Perfection is viewed as unrealistic and unattainable. Reading and writing are once again important as listening and speaking. Vocabulary instruction is once again important, especially at intermediate and advanced levels. Errors are viewed as inevitable to be used constructively in the learning process. The teacher is expected to have good general proficiency in the target language as well as an ability to analyze the target language. Effective humanistic approach. A reaction to the general lack of affective considerations in both audiolinguism and the cognitive approach, respect is emphasized for the individual, each student, the teacher, and for his or her feelings. Communication that is meaningful to the learner is emphasized. Instruction involves much work in pairs and small groups. Class atmosphere is viewed as more important than materials or methods. Peer support and interaction are viewed as a self-realization experience. The teacher is a counselor or facilitator. Comprehension-based approach, an outgrowth of research in first language acquisition that led some language methodologists to assume that second or foreign language learning is very similar to first language acquisition. Learners shouldn't speak until they feel ready to do so. This results in better pronunciation than if the learner is forced to speak immediately. What is communicative approach? The communicative approach or communicative language teaching is a name which was given to a set of beliefs which included not only a re-examination of what aspects of language to teach but also a shift in emphasis. The communicative approach puts the focus on communicative interaction in class, not on a correct but mined and meaningless reproduction of the linguistic forms prescribed for a specific lesson. The communicative approach or communicative language teaching is an outgrowth of the work of anthropological linguists and Freudian linguists who viewed language first and foremost as a system for communication. The communication continuum, non-communicative activities, communicative activities, the communication continuum, no communicative desire, no communicative purpose, form not content, one language item only, teacher intervention, and so on. The role of authentic text in teaching a foreign language. This is the second question. What is authentic material? Authentic material is any material which hasn't been specifically produced for the purpose of language teaching, and this easily differentiates it from course book materials. For example, newspapers, magazines, articles. Authentic text as materials which are designed for native speakers. They are real texts designed not for language students but for the speakers of the language. Hammer, 1991. What benefits can teachers get from using authentic materials? Authentic materials improve language skills, linguistic knowledge, intercultural understanding. What are the advantages of using authentic materials? Real language, natural model, motivation, culture, needs and interests, creative teaching. Are there any disadvantages of using authentic materials? Can frustrate weak learners. They require skills and vocabulary, contain difficult vocabulary and complex language structures, and need more effort to be explained. Can add a burden on teachers as they have to make them appropriate for their learners. May be too culturally biased. Contain too many structures which are mixed. Where can you find authentic materials? Internet website, CNN, Good Food, USA Today, BBC.com, World News, The New York Times, National Geographic, The Guardian, and so on. What types of authentic materials can we use? Printed materials, newspapers, magazines, books, restaurant menus, auditory materials, radio news, songs, phone messages, podcasts, visual materials, posters, street scenes, audiovisual films, commercial advertisements, and online materials, websites, blogs, social networking sites, games, and so on. Factors in choosing authentic reading materials: suitability of content, uh, exploitability, readability, and presentation. Suitability of content: does the text interest the student? Is it relevant to the student's needs? Does it represent the type of materials that the students will use outside the classroom? And so on. Question number 3: text as a resource of professionally based information. Uh, Literary theory: a text is an object that can be read, whether this object is work of literature, a street sign, an arrangement of buildings on a city block. What do texts usually do? Unfortunately, this aspect of text use is often neglected or ineffectively put into practice. A language teaching text may simply be seen as something to be gone through in one way or another without any clear definition of the outcomes envisaged. One approach to going through is a traditional pseudo-intensive lesson where the teacher uses text as the basis for a kind-free association firework display. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye.